I want to talk about some of the new features in the new version of Kala Vedic Astrology Software that we're just releasing this week, September of 2013. We've been making Kala since 2001, and this is a version I'm very, very happy with because I finally finished programming a lot of intense calculations from Brihat Parashara that I've been working on for 9 years now. And these are calculations that haven't been programmed or calculated by any other software. So this is a big milestone in Kala. So I wanted to start by talking about some of those. The first, we have a screen called Yoga Judgment. And this has the mathematical calculations of strengths from Brihat Parashara that really come in handy when it comes to evaluating the strength of a yoga. What we've got here, we use the planets Ishta and Kashta, which is its good and ill quality. It's Shubha and Ashubha, which is its auspicious and inauspicious nature. And then it's Digbala. It's Shubha Digbala, which is its Digbala. And then it's negative Digbala, which is how far away it is from Digbala. And with those three things, we get these values for a planet of how strong it is. For instance, Sun in this chart, this is a chart of Angelina Jolie, has 4.1 points of favor and 2.6 points of negativity. So that means anytime the Sun is forming a yoga, that's a good yoga, a yoga that gives wealth, happiness, success, whatever, something desirable, it'll give that desirable stuff to 4.1 points. However, anytime the Sun is forming a yoga that gives, loss of money, loss of health, any type of troubles or difficulties, then that yoga is going to manifest up 2.6 points of good. So these points down here are not what we want to use for seeing if a planet will do good or do bad. We use the good number to see how much good it gives when it's in a good yoga or in a good position in the chart. And we use the bad value to see how much bad it'll give when it's in a poor position or in a bad yoga. So here we can see that Mars and Mercury, whenever they're in good yogas, are going to be particularly favorable because they're really high end points. Venus is going to be nice too because it's sitting at 5.1 points. On the other hand, planets, namely the Moon and Saturn, if they're forming any negative yogas, are going to really cause a lot of negativity because their points are low, except for their negative value is very high, especially for Saturn here at 27.3. So those are the basic numbers, but all those numbers are used in conjunction with other planets and other houses. So if a yoga asks for, say, Jupiter aspected by the waning moon, and a yoga asks for that, we can see Jupiter here aspected by waning moon. Well, that means it's asking for a negative yoga, and we'd see that moon's hurting Jupiter 12.2 points here, okay, in the context of a malefic yoga. So we can see all the aspects influence between the planets calculated exactly. Then a yoga might ask for a planet to be conjunct or aspecting a house for good or ill. So for instance, if we go to the yogas, I search in Kala and we pick out the 144 Bhava yogas. And for Angelina, we see the Lord of 8 in the body, so that's the 8th Lord in the first. The one born is deprived of bodily well-being, scorning devas and Brahmins, and drawing with wounds, abscesses, and tumors. So this is a tough yoga for your body to have the 8th Lord in the first. How close is it to that first cusp? Well, we go over here to the first, and we look at Saturn, and we see Saturn's causing 16.9 points to the first house. So that yoga can cause quite a bit of grief to her. Now Saturn starts out at 27.3 points, but it only gives 16.9 of that because of the fact that it's 12 degrees away from the ascendant, so it's not given all of that value. So that yoga would manifest to a negative value of 16.9. And as we know, she's had some physical liabilities, some of them self-induced. And, so this is a way we can evaluate the negativity of that yoga if I export, for example. Then up here, we've got a table that lets us see anything from any point of view. So for instance, say we want to say there's a yoga. In fact, there is a yoga. Go to the Kala Yoga searches and we can see the Berry Yoga. Venus and the Lagna Lord in angles to Jupiter and the 9th Lord strong. Okay, so Venus is in the angle the 4th from Jupiter up here. And Venus is also in an angle, or the moon, the Lagna Lord, is also in an angle from Jupiter. So Jupiter, Venus, and moon are all causing this Bari yoga. Well, we see that Jupiter has a good value of 5.1 points, Jupiter of 2.6, and the moon is just 0.4. But all three of those planets are working together, and they're working from the point of view of Jupiter. The yoga asks for the Lagna Lord moon and Venus to be on angles from Jupiter. So we want to click on here, on this upper right hand table, and click on Jupiter. Now all these calculations up here have been updated from Jupiter's point of view. So when I go to the fourth house, I'm looking at the fourth from Jupiter. And I can see that Venus is influencing the fourth from Jupiter to 3.2 points. So it's going to give that yoga to 3.2 points. And then we see that Mercury, or the moon, the other component of that yoga, is going to influence that yoga to 0.3 points. And Jupiter, as the foundation of that yoga, is going to influence that yoga to its full value of 2.6 points. But out of those three numbers, Venus is the strongest at 3.2. So we know that Venus Dasha will give more of the success and wealth of the Bari yoga than will Jupiter or the Moon Dasha. And we know that Moon Dasha will give the least amount of wealth due to the fact that it's got the weakest value of just 0.3. So Venus Dasha will be the best, followed by Jupiter, followed by Moon. But also even within Venus Dasha, we could use this. In fact, she's been running Venus Dasha since her acting started taking off back in 1993. Venus Jupiter was her best period, during which she made Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and was her most wealth-producing period, just as the points show. Venus and Jupiter are in the yoga, and so when in their mutual periods, that yoga is really going to become active. But Venus Jupiter was much more productive in films and in finances than was Venus Moon. Venus Moon, she did 2 TV shows, or 2 TV documentary films, and that's really it. That didn't really pay that well. The reason being because from the fourth from Jupiter, the moon's just giving 0.3 points. So we see moon's not going to give as much as Venus. It's going to give 10 times as much good stuff. And it did. Mr. and Mrs. Smith shot during Venus Jupiter and released during Venus Jupiter, earned $478 million and was her #1 biggest movie to date. So we can use these points to evaluate all the yogas. And that's important sometimes because there's multiple yogas in the chart. There's good yogas and bad yogas. And you might have a yoga to give money and a yoga to take money. Well, which one's going to give more? If the yoga that gives money is giving more money than the yoga that takes money is taking money, you'll end up with some money. But if the yoga that's taking money is taking way more than your good yogas are giving the money, you might end up on the streets. So there's all these times when we need to actually evaluate the yoga, not just know the yoga, but evaluate it. So with this yoga, a person might have said, well, Angelina, I think Venus Moon will be the best period because it's forming a good yoga, and the moon's also forming a lot of other great yogas. But they might have been wrong because we have to look at the strengths. And here we'd see that, it's actually Jupiter's giving more than the moon. Or Jupiter over here, 2.6 points, is giving much more than the moon. And so it's really handy to be able to evaluate yogas. So that's one thing we've done. We've had this whole screen for evaluating yogas. I have a huge course on this screen, evaluating all kinds of yogas, teaching exactly how to make all these calculations on my astrology-videos website. So that's one of the new features I'm finally glad to be done with. Okay, another thing we've done, I've got a screen here, it's called Avashtas Calculated. And what this screen does, it takes the strength of Shadbala combined with all the Avashtas or planetary conditions, such as, what are they? The Deeptati Avashtas, the Jagratati Avashtas, and the Lajitati Avashtas, all of which give proportions of strength. So the Jagratati Avashtas are based on a planet being in exaltation or own sign, or in a friend sign, or neutral sign, or in an enemy sign. And an enemy sign, the planet becomes sleeping, it can't do anything. Or if it's in debilitation, it's considered to be sleeping and have no power. In owner exaltation, it's considered to have full power, it's supposed to be awake. And in a neutrals or friend sign, the planet is considered to be sort of drowsy but still active, not wide awake though, and it gives 50% of effects. So that's a value we've included in these tables. Another value is the not the Deeptati Avashtas, the Baladi Avashtas, which is where a planet's at in its sign. So for instance, Mars here at 18 degrees of Gemini, 1851 Gemini, is in what we call Vriddha Avashta, or old age state, at which point it's going to give 1/8 of its potential. The Sun over here at 1236 Leo is in an adult state, and so it'll give its full maturation, its full of strength in results. Venus over here at 2631 Virgo is an infant state. It's like a little baby, so it'll only give 25% of its potential. So that's calculated into there. But the most important thing, and the single most important thing for evaluating a horoscope and the planets, is the Lajitati Avashtas, which is basically a planet's ability to produce dependent upon the friends and enemies and other planets that influence it. So every planet's trying to produce something in the chart. What's it trying to produce? The things it's joining and aspecting, the bhavakas. And it'll do so in accordance with its condition, its avashtas. So if it has a lot of friend influences, and those friends are actually able to help, meaning those friends are not in a dead state, they're not in a sleeping state, but they're alive and ready to help, then they'll help that planet be more productive. And enemies, if enemies are influencing that planet, if they're in a wide and awake state, they're going to do their best to hold that planet back. So there's this battle going on between different planets wanting to do different things. Some are helping each other, some are doing things that are distracting from the time and energy the other planet needs to do its best. And that's why we always have to make these decisions in life. Can I do this or should I do this? Which one do we do? It's all based on this kind of war of these planets pulling us in opposite directions. And ultimately, the direction we get pulled in, and therefore the events in our life, depend on the strength of the pull, how strong the planet is to make something happen, whether a good thing or a bad thing. And that's what these tables show. So for instance, here we see Jupiter is a planet in the chart. Let's go here to the Rashi chart. Jupiter in the Rashi chart is getting 58 points of favor to do something, to produce the things it's influencing. Jupiter is influenced by the Sun, a friend, who helps him 381 points. So that lets us know that Jupiter's Sun is going to be the most productive period in their Rashi chart. Boom, just that easy. Jupiter Sun is when Jupiter is going to be most productive. What's it going to be productive in? Well, we click on Jupiter and we can see the bhavas that Jupiter Sun's influencing here. And we can say, well, it's influencing this bhava the most. Therefore, it is doing that. Now, on this screen, it's not showing the full points. It looks like it's chopping them a little bit. The reason it's doing that is because to make a video, I have to change the screen resolution to a really smaller size, and so the numbers get cramped. But actually, if you're running this, you would see that, the numbers properly and clearly, and you can see, oh, well, the 10th house is getting influenced by 98 point something points. So in Jupiter Sun, the 10th house is what's going to get boosted the most. The 6th and 8th houses don't get boosted at all. The 10th house gets the most benefit. So Jupiter Sun is going to be a great period for them to excel in their profession. Okay. So then we also can see, well, Jupiter Mercury looks like to be the worst time, because Mercury is an enemy of Jupiter and therefore it's hurting it to 22.6 points. Luckily, Jupiter starts out with 58.8 points though. And so it keeps everything from getting destroyed. And however, if we look at this a little more closely, we see that Jupiter is the 7th lord, and the 7th lord can always be a period that can cause some trouble with one's health. It's what we call a Marika planet, or death-inflicting planet. So that signals us that, well, Jupiter Mercury can be a period that can cause some stress to the health. So that means we'd want to also look at the Trim Samsha. So over here we have other Vargas. You can select any Varga you want. You can select the Navamsa Varga. You can select any Varga you want, Saptamsha, any of the Vargas. Here we have the 30th Varga, which is critical for disease. And there's two ways to calculate the 30th Varga. We do it the right way, which means we actually calculate a whole chart. We don't just put the planets in the trim samsha of Sun, or excuse me, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, or Saturn. We actually calculate a whole chart in accordance with some other texts. So anyway, here we see that Jupiter in this chart starts out with 0 points. He has no strength. And the reason he has no strength is because he's in the last 6 degrees of Leo, which puts him in Mrityu, or dead avashta. Then we also see that Jupiter rules the 8th Rashi from the ascendant. And the lord of the 8th Rashi from the ascendant can always threaten the stability and foundation of something. And the 30th Varga is the Varga for health and disease and arishtas, or fatal things happening. Then we look under Mercury, and we see Mercury smashing Jupiter to 42 points, or 45 points, so it's hurting it. So Jupiter-Mercury becomes a real devastating period for health, actually. Okay? Mercury also rules the 2nd house from the ascendant. The lord of the 2nd is also a potential, what we call mark, or death-influencing position. Unfortunately, Jupiter doesn't have any strength, because as the ruler of the 8th house, when he's strong, he'll try to keep the person alive and well. But Jupiter, like I said, is dead in that chart. Jupiter-Mercury comes along, and they get trashed. What gets trashed? Well, we can go over here to Jupiter, Mercury, and see where a lot of bad points are. And we get the most points onto the 1st house and the 10th house. 80 points to the 10th, 44 points to the 1st. Well, what happened during that period, they got severely ill. Illness required hospitalization. We can see that due to the Lagna Lord Mercury being in the 12th in the birth chart. Jupiter was both in the Rashi and Trim Samsha was damaged by Mercury, who's an enemy. And there you see the 10th Bhav is the most affected at 80 points. The 10th, their work completely was wiped out. They couldn't work at all for a year. Okay? And the second most impacted bhava appears to be the 1st bhava at 44 points. And which means their health, their body, their physical body was trashed. This person was healthy, athletic, exercising all the time. They went to someone who literally lost half their weight and could barely get out of bed for weeks, and had to go through a whole recuperative period where it took them a year to where they could get back to work. Okay, so we can see how these numbers, as Jupiter is really getting trashed here. We also can see that Jupiter-Sun is going to be better for health. And Jupiter-Venus was also really bad too, because see how Venus is trashing Jupiter? So with these tables, we can evaluate the bhavas of the chart, the planets that find the planets that are productive and when they're going to be productive. People always ask me, they'll say, oh, I've got Jupiter and Pisces in the 7th house. I'm a Virgo rising. What does that mean? I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. You know, what are the conditions of Jupiter? Jupiter in Pisces just tells me that he's awake in the Rashi chart. And that based on that he'll be productive, but it's never just based on that. What about all the other planets influencing Jupiter? What about all the other, what about Jupiter's dignity in the other Varga charts that I might care to look at? All that has to be considered. And here's the case of a person who has Jupiter and Pisces in the 7th house, who lost their work for a year and almost died because Jupiter was getting what we call starved by Mercury. And so that happened in Jupiter-Mercury. Okay? So there's a lot of, when you start looking at these avashtas, things really get spelled out real quickly why things are happening. And we can use these avashtas without all these mathematical parts and strengths, but it really helps to use them so we can see, is it just an inconvenience, or is it something that's going to be more tragic? And also in measuring good things, we can, like I said, we can simply see here Jupiter-Sun is going to be the best part of Jupiter Dasha. It's going to be fantastic for all the bhavas that Jupiter is influencing. Okay, namely, like I said, Jupiter-Sun is when they're going to be at their best career-wise with 98 points. And then Jupiter is also looking to be quite strong for the 1st house, and that'll happen under Jupiter-Sun. This is like 128 or something here. It's like a really high value. We just can't see the one. All right, so that's one of the other screens we've done. I'll be teaching a course on using this screen, exactly what all these calculations are, starting towards the end of September, beginning of October of 2013. And that'll be at the Astrology-Videos website. And that course will eventually be rendered into audio as well. Okay. So between these two screens, the Yoga Judgment screen and this Avashta's calculated screen, we basically programmed all the mathematical parts of Brihat Parashara to help in our predictions. And then we use the calculations as per, the Avashtas given in Brihat Parashara, which really show the condition of the planet. If it's in a good condition, it produces. If it's in a bad condition, it destroys. And planets usually have a mix. This Jupiter is a good example of a planet that has a lot of help from the sun. So Jupiter's sun will really help them build their health, because this is the health and disease chart. But Jupiter Mercury and Jupiter Venus will very much trash their health, because that's when Jupiter goes into a bad state. So you can see why there's no point in ever saying, well, this is going to be a great dasha because Jupiter's in Pisces. Okay, it's not going to work that way. Even marriage-wise, in the beginning of Jupiter Mercury, their marriage fell apart. Here Jupiter has got 0 points in the Navamsa again, so he can't protect the marriage, can't hold it together. He rules the 9th Lord, the 9th Bhavakas, as well as the 9th Rashi from the Lagna, which have to do with marriage stability. And he's getting trashed by Mercury to 45 points in the Navamsa. So Jupiter Mercury, their relationship got trashed too. Okay, and they were really depressed about that as well. So, and their marriage ended during that beginning of that period. So it's really helpful to see these evaluations. A lot of people say, oh, Jupiter's in the 7th house in your Navamsa. That's great. It's not going to be great all the time. Jupiter, just like Saturn or Mars or Rahu, can really ruin things. It all depends on the condition. Saturn, Mars, Rahu, they can all give great things. It just depends on their conditions. And that's what these Avashtas let us see. They let us see the condition of the planet. And on this screen, we've programmed all those conditions along with the mathematical strength so we can evaluate it. Because we know Jupiter, Mercury, well, Mercury's an enemy of Jupiter, is going to hurt Jupiter. But how much damage is it going to cause? Is it going to cause just a lot of disharmony in the marriage? Or is the damage severe enough to end it? And we can see here the damage is severe because Mercury is trashing Jupiter to 45 points because Jupiter doesn't have a lot of strength to resist. All right, so that's another screen we've got. And those are all unique to Kala. Those have never been programmed before. Another thing we did, we programmed progressions for Western astrologers because so many Western astrologers are coming into Vedic and they like their progressions. But honestly, progressions, when used with Vedic astrology, are worth using. When used with Western astrology, they're not worth using. That's the funny thing about it. I remember when I was doing Western before Vedic, I was struggling with trying to predict anything with progressions. It was like pulling teeth. I just didn't see the events line up. And astrologers use like a 6-month window on progressions in general, Western astrologers, which to me is a joke, using a 6-month window. Because with a 6-month window that big, you can explain any event away pretty much. But with when we use Vedic astrology and we start adding the Varga charts, without which you can't make any real solid predictions, progressions sometimes just pop into place. For here's a chart of a person who, when Saturn or progressed Sun conjunct their Saturn, they got married. You're like, wait, how can that be? How can the progressed Sun conjuncting Saturn give marriage? Well, watch this. Pull up the Navamsa chart, and in the Navamsa chart, Saturn's the 1st Lord, Sun is the 7th Lord, and they're conjunct each other by progression. So that's you, or that's this person with their 7th Lord, their spouse, getting married because it's the Navamsa. So they came together with a marriage partnership right when Saturn and Sun were conjunct via progressions. Okay, so when you use the Varga charts and you see these progressions come together and you see what those planets coming together represent in the Varga charts, events will just really nicely pop into place some way. But if we try to predict marriage based on Western astrology on this, wouldn't that have been hard? You know, we're looking at the first Lord Mercury and the seventh Lord Jupiter and Venus. And honestly, they're not causing anything. Venus is not, nothing's on top of Venus. Venus isn't getting any aspects. Let's aspect everything here. Well, it's getting, yeah, Venus is not getting any aspects. Jupiter, the seventh Lord, is not getting any aspects. They're just nothing, just using the Rashi chart to show why progressions would have given marriage. But when we pop that Navamsa up and we see, oh, the first and seventh Lords are coming together in the ninth house, the house of committing to a marriage, and they're the first and seventh Lords in the Navamsa, you can see how progressions are a great tool sometimes. So we went ahead and programmed progressions because we had a lot of people ask for it who are coming in from Western astrology. The other thing we did something called the Lovato Bhadra chakra. This is something a lot of you all have been asking for years. This is a very traditional classic technique. It's a very broad technique that's based on nakshatras. And what's done is the nakshatras are all put here on the outside edge. And then inside that we put our Rashis, like Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo. And then we put the planets and their nakshatras in the chart. And then this chart is read, takes a little, you know, it's a new thing to look at, so you kind of have to get used to looking at it. But different planets are influencing it. Like right here, we see Venus, Lagna Ketu are influencing each other. Like if you draw a cross, those indicate influences. Or if you go down, those indicate influences. So here we see that this person's Tithi, their seventh Tithi, is influencing with their moon. And that means something to someone who uses this chakra. We also go crosswise, like this. So these are there. So right here, moon, right here is related to Saturn, to this nakshatra. And so with this, a person, an astrologer, can read things about the person's life, but also it's a really good timing technique. And what you do is you find the transits. Like we can find the transits for right now. Or for any place, time, you can set the date to any transits you may want. And now we can see, well, right now for this person, the sun and moon are transiting according to this chakra, they're Lagna and Ketu. And with Venus. So sun and moon are hitting Venus, Lagna, Ketu. So this person's going to have a Venus, Lagna, Ketu Sunday. Okay? As long as these are in the nakshatra. The sun will be in the nakshatra about 13 days, the moon 1 day. Okay? Then we also can see moon and sun are crossing the Lagna here and also tagging the moon. So we could base a prediction on that. So you can set the transits to go around. And there's lots of, when you start using this chakra, lots of weird things will pop into place. We also have the letters. Okay? So for instance, let's see. If we find a letter here, like where's those vowels? Let's see. When there's a transit, say, going on up here and triggering this letter along with their Lagna, say Venus is crossing up here and therefore transiting their Lagna, that could be like a relationship or romantic transit. And the person's name they might meet during that time will more likely start with a D, a R, an E, or an N. Okay? And so some of these interesting little connections can be made in making transit predictions. So that's one thing that's done with this. You just watch the transits. The other thing is you can do a Pakshaphala, which is the results for 2 weeks. And for that, it basically, every 2 weeks, it calculates particular transits. And so you read your chart for 2 weeks. It basically, and you see what's going to, it lets you see what's going to happen for the next 2 weeks. And then you can click here and go to the next 2 weeks, and the next 2 weeks, and the next 2 weeks, and the next 2 weeks. And then every 2 weeks, see what's in store for you once you learn how to read this. You also can do what's called a Dina Phala, which Dina means day, which means you can see the effects every day. Okay? And you know, you can just watch the effects every day. You can see the date changing up here, and you can say, oh, what's going to happen to me today? And read this chart. So it's a great little transit tool to be used. I haven't taught any classes on this, so unfortunately I don't have any information explaining all this to you. But a lot of people know how to use it. I've just been waiting for it. Otherwise, there's lots of really good stuff online in learning how to use it. Even with this chakra, the Savartha Bhadra chakra, you can do Muhurta Phala, which you set the date. Say you want to do like right now, well, say this person is going to do something October 29th. We calculate this, and this we could read the Muhurta. We'd see Rahu was crossing their Lagna, was aspecting Lagna. And that shows that there could be a little confusion about their activities during that day, and certainly some things will not work out as expected. But Jupiter's on top of Jupiter, which means it could be a start of something significant in their life, especially because Jupiter's also crossing the Lagna. So that's favoring a good Muhurta. Then we see that Venus would be on top of their Mercury and Sun. And that would indicate, things with business and career would be a good Muhurta for those type of things. But with Mars on Venus, it would show, doing the Muhurta on that day might cause some stress and quarreling and, frustration with women or some other Venetian things. So if the person was going to buy a car that day, I'd say, no, don't use this day to buy a car. And don't travel during this day, because you never want to travel when Venus is afflicted. Okay? And of course, Venus is aspecting the Lagna over here too, in transit. So it wouldn't be an ideal day for this person to travel or do any Venetian activity. So this is a really involved technique, and there's some astrologers that use this for everything. I even know astrologers who've used it for stock market predictions. So we programmed the whole chakra, and what we've done that's unique, we've got all these neat features where you can just skip day by day and so on, and make it very user-friendly. Then we programmed two other chakras. One's called the Dimba chakra, which is a baby. Okay. In fact, one thing I wanted to do here, let me pull up Angelina again and go to her Dimba chakra. I meant to do this before, I just forgot. Okay, so her Dimba chakra falls in the feet. So this Dimba chakra, this baby chakra, just gives some really basic info that you'll usually find about 2/3 of it to be very accurate for the person. The native adopts agriculture as his profession, does a little of religious deeds, is fearless of his enemies, and is engaged in some service. Well, that's true of Angelina. She does a little religious stuff. She's not heavily spiritual, but she does some. She's sort of interested in it. Fearless of her enemies. Well, that's very true for Angelina in her movie roles, but also in her life. And engaged in some service. She is. She's very charitable. She gives a lot of time and energy and money into humanistic endeavors. And then there's the Chessani Chakra. This is the cycle or the wheel of Saturn, essentially, and it's also related to a body. The Dimba Chakra is related to a baby infant, and the Sani Chakra is related to a full-grown person. So when the nakshatra falls in the eyes, basically they take the nakshatra as counted from Saturn. When it falls in the eyes, there'll be abundance, which is completely true of Angelina Jolie. So these Dimba and Sani chakras are just two little snapshot traditional techniques from India that are based on just nakshatras. There's a lot of nakshatra-only techniques in India where they just focus on nakshatras. A lot of them use 28 nakshatras. Most of the chakras use 28 nakshatras, like this chakra here, the Savartha Bhadra, uses the Abhijit nakshatra to make it 28. These two chakras, the Dimba chakra and the Sani chakra, just use 27. So even for people who kind of feel weird about using 28 nakshatras when you're used to 27, these two chakras are the two chakras I was able to dig up that just use 27 nakshatras, and they work extremely well. There's a lot of other chakras that are used for Muhurta, for traveling, going to war, that kind of stuff. But for that stuff, this Savartha Bhadra chakra is really an awesome thing to use. But when it comes to talking about the person and getting some real easy to find insights, this Dimba chakra and Sani chakra are real simple. I teach how to use these two chakras in my Nakshatras audio course. And I'll probably make a video before long on these two. All right, those are the main features in Kala. Other things we've done. We updated the atlas. Russia had huge time zone changes that pretty much changed everything in Russia as of March 27th. So if you don't have an atlas update from March 27th or onward, your not going to be right for your Russian time zones for anyone born after March 27th, 2011. So we worked that out. We made it so you can print a PDF. So you can make PDF printouts and email them. Oh, we did a Shadasha Vargas, where are they? Shadasha Vargas printout. So we did you can print out all your Shadasha Varga deities here. So we can save it as a PDF. And where is that PDF? Anyway, it's somewhere. It shows all the deities. So this shows all the Varga deities. So in the Hora, we got the Lord Surya, Indu, all the deities of the nakshatras, as I taught in my nakshatras video course. Okay, the other things we've done, two more of the bigger things. Oh, we added some main screens. So some people wanted more main screens, so we added main screen 3 and main screen 4, all of which are totally customizable as normal. Oh, now the charts are stored in your My Documents folder, or anywhere you want for that matter, so they're easier for you to back up. Also, if say you want to put a blank window, say you're at one of your screens, and you can now put a blank window and clean up your screen if you don't want so much junk on there. Okay. Oh, we added asteroids. You know, some Western people coming in wanted asteroids, so that was pretty easy to do, so we added some asteroids to it. And then there's lots of little tiny things here and there, but the main features are those 3 screens. The Avashta screen for making predictions about your bhavas based on the planetary strengths and conditions. The Yoga Judgment screen, which uses the mathematical principles to evaluate yogas. And the Savata Bhadra chakra with the Dimba chakra and the Chessani Chakra. And again, Savata Bhadra chakra can be used for everything. You can read the chart, you can time things, you can look at transit effects, and you can even use it for Muhurta. So it's a really broad technique. It's sort of the king of nakshatra-based techniques. Although really my favorite nakshatra-based techniques, this is the best and well-known one, are these terror tables. These are really great. We've had this for a while, but I haven't talked that much about these. But basically here we just see the nakshatras, the planets in the different nakshatras. And, you know, we can make a lot of predictions about these. Actually, I did teach this in my nakshatras course, and I may even have a free audio on it. But if you're in the nakshatras, definitely try to check out this Tara Bala. And Tara is basically the idea that the 3rd, 5th, and the 7th nakshatras are troublemakers, as are their lords, and the other nakshatras are, you know, more favorably inclined. And so if you have a good planet in a bad nakshatra, it's going to suffer. And whereas a good planet in a good nakshatra will suffer. And that works out really well. I know in my own chart, I've noticed this chakra to work so well. It's one of the things I always like to do to get a broad idea of what to expect during Vimshattari Dasha. Okay. All right, well, that's it for the new features. The update's only $30 if you download it. It's $40 if you decide to get a CD mailed to you plus the shipping. Thank you. Oh, and of course, where can you get it? You can get it at www.vedic-astrology.net. So everyone can see that. And just go to the software Kala page where you can get the update right away. Thank you.